Hello everyone, thanks again for coming back to this channel to talk about the progress that we're making with the design system for the Plasma desktop. Over the few months that I've been away from posting, there's been a few developments, of course, and I wanted to share those with you. One of the main things that I wanted to talk about is a new stage in our plan to actually move into Penpot. And with this move, we want to make sure that we are basically cleaning up all of our components, leaving behind Figma, and launching into an open source platform that does essentially the same things. Now, this was not possible before. Penpot, unfortunately, was still in heavy development, and a lot of the features that we needed for the design system were not available. So it made it almost impossible to move some things into Penpot. But now that has changed, and it sounds to me like the Penpot team has made great strides into making Penpot much better, much more full-featured. And now it's a possibility, it's a reality that we can move a few of our assets into Penpot. So let me walk you through some of the stuff that we are actually working through and how this affects the way that we do design for Plasma. Now, we created the Ocean Design Systems Foundations library, which is essentially a fancy way of saying this is a Penpot file that contains all of our graphical assets. Now, what we have begun to do is to move not just our foundations into Penpot, but also our first set of shared components. And I'm going to show you this. So just to recap, foundations, focusing on the top left, right of the screen, you see that we have been able to move the colors, our typography, our shadows, and our blurs, icons, and spacings into Penpot. However, I have to caveat this. Our blurs and our icons are still not supported 100%. They're still coming through. But as far as I understand, it seems like the Penpot team has been able to achieve layer blur, but only under their new rendering engine. And I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. Shadow tokens are on the way as well. And shadow tokens are super important because shadows tend to be kind of complex. They are most of the times in our system composed of more than one shadow. It's just overlaid shadows on top of each other that give a cool effect. And today we cannot save those as assets or tokens. We have to basically repeat the manual creation of each of the shadows for each of our components that we want to style. So that's on the way, and I'm very excited to hear that from the Penpot team. But one of the main things, and I'm just going to show you something here that I find super cool. I'm going to show you the badges, at least. One of the cool things that very recently Penpot was able to enable was variants, the use of variants. Now, if you don't know much about variants, basically it's a graphical way, at least in Penpot, to group various components with different states, and then all of that information gets saved into Penpot, where you can go anywhere in your design system and just paste a badge, for example, and just say, well, I want this badge to be the state of success. I want it to have an icon or an avatar. And so this makes it super easy for us to basically design on the fly. So when I go, for example, to Penpot and I want to pick up a badge, I just put it here. And if you notice on the right hand side of the screen, you get a description of the component, which actually you can swap for anything else. So let's say in your design you wanted to swap for any other component, you could do that without having to basically redesign and reorganize your designs. But also, you can create variables, and these are defined in the variants container that you see here. So for example, I'm going to click the badge section, and you see how these variants are described right here. And this is basically the source. You don't want to touch this after it's completed because it could actually get very disorganized. But when you actually use a batch, now you have those variant elements into it, and you can actually switch between all the types of variants that you have created. For example, in my case, we created the size and we gave it different kinds of icons and basically representations that you could use in a UI, and basically get all the guidance and all the availability that you need to put this component on screen. And you can change colors and to a warning sign. And so anyway, you get the point, right? So this makes it super easy to just basically pick and choose components and then just group them into your design. So as you can see, this actually enabled us to do way more things that we were able before. And now, because of that, we have begun the migration of our shared assets. And we started with buttons, and forgive me, but this one is a kind of a heavy page, and so it takes a little bit to load. Then button groups, then badges, and as you just saw, and inputs. And basically we're trying to describe graphically what types of elements you could use on the screen. We worked on drop downs, and thanks to the team in Ocean that has been moving all these components into the page here. So it's looking good. It's working well so far, but there are still others that we need to move over. So I was working on toggles, checkboxes. That one was done by a contributor. And then checkbox groups, and then avatars. And the idea is that you describe everything that you do graphically, right? Everything that you would need in a UI, you want to give it certain state, colors, and changes. So, and then group it up into an avatar group so that it actually gets used in the UI. Anyway, so there is more to be done, but I'm excited to see that these components are now supported and making the design much, much easier for us to execute. Of course, just to make sure that you understand this, none of these UI elements are real today in Plasma. They're not created yet. We are working through completing the first iteration of the Union engine, which would enable us to execute some of these components in the real world. But it doesn't hurt to be prepared, to be ready for it, to make sure that whenever Union is complete, we're able to basically pass on clear, useful information to build UI from. And it would be backed up by a design system like this. So migration is ongoing. It seems like we can execute everything that we see in Figma. And we are able to make sure that basically they look the same, they behave the same as they did in Figma. Another awesome thing that happened this month was Penpot Fest. Penpot Fest happened in Spain, and it was just a 2 to 3 day conference, basically to talk about all the new things that Penpot is doing. And they recently released some of their videos about basically what they announced, and some awesome announcements came out. First of all, they're working very hard on their new rendering engine. If you have used Penpot before, you know that unfortunately, this window in the center, while it was developed to create a very consistent design and very aligned to the browser, to the DOM in the browser, browsers are unfortunately not able to keep up with the rendering engines for such a heavy computation oriented, math oriented type of application like this one, where it really needs to be on point and fast. So over time, the performance of the rendering window, basically this thing in the center, has not been optimal. And the Penpot team recognized this problem, and they are actually working on a new rendering engine based on Skia and using WebAssembly. which is super cool. This is basically what Chrome browser uses to render 2D graphics, and in a few other Chrome-based browsers. But it apparently seems to be much faster. They actually gave a very short demo of basically moving stuff around en masse, and it worked out perfectly. So I can't be more excited to test it out. In fact, they're having a beta process start, they said, in the coming weeks. I don't know how long that will be, but you bet that the team at Plasma has signed up to participate in the beta to just render it out and make sure that it works properly, and provide feedback, basically. They also, as I mentioned before, they allowed the creation of more tokens such as typography, shadows, and then also they are bringing layer blur into the system. And those are good additions that will actually enable us to do way more. They also mentioned in passing that the new rendering engine allows for better shape control when it comes to, for example, icons. So of course, we're going to explore the ability to create ocean icons into Penpot and see how that happens. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it works well. And basically, overall, they're just making their system way, way, way better. They have now integrations with AI, which is really cool. And basically, we also reached out to the Penpot team to learn more about some of their announcements, and they mentioned that they'd like to do a demo for us for all the things that they've created. So we're excited to see that. We're going to set it up and basically invite the Plasma community to join. But another cool thing that I wanted to mention as a last idea is that now we have the ability to create libraries. So we basically if we invite people into our team, we can publish a library directly to the team that is using, for example, in this case, the Ocean System Foundation document. And we can form a team around it, and people can sign up into Penpot. Basically, they're working in your own instance, and they all can see all of these assets for use. So they could independently create other designs without the need to touch the library itself. But of course, this is an open source project, so we want to share with as many people as possible so that they can use our assets and create awesome things for Plasma. So with that in mind, we published the first iterations of our Ocean Design Foundations library. And as you can see here, it says unpublished. And it says unpublished because it's already put out to the public, but only for the ones that are in this instance. Well, how can the rest of the people actually get their hands on these foundations? We have the ability now to download a Penpot file which contains all of the elements and all of the libraries and assets that you see here on screen. And when you do that, we actually put those in a GitHub. Well, in our case, it's GitLab, so invent.kde.org. And you can actually go there and clone this repository. Right now, it lives in my personal repository, and I'll share a link to it in the description. But eventually, in the future, we want to move this into a kind of a real, Plasma-backed repository, so it's widely used and understood. But anyway, so the idea is that you're able to actually work with this same library that we do, and we have now the ability to basically make exports periodically and upload them into GitHub so that anyone that wants to use it can use it and have the latest version of it. Not only that, GitLab, is great for people to comment, give feedback, provide screenshots, or even just go into some of the code for some of the elements we've placed there and edit it and provide some upgrades. So in the future, basically, we foresee that the ability for anybody in the world really to use this Penpot file would be dependent on our ability to provide you with a link via GitLab. So we now have it, like I said, in a personal repo, but in the future it will be more in widely spread. So stay tuned. These are great updates. We're continuing the work. And today, our team is mostly focused on building new application icons, basically to replace all the colorful icons that we use for apps, and also migrating our assets to the degree that we can into Penpot and leaving Figma behind, basically. So great work is happening. We're glad that you're reading about this right now. And we hope that if you are one of those designers that is interested in open source, you're welcome to just join into this effort. And I'll leave more links at the bottom of the screen for you to use and connect with us. So thank you so much.